Hello. So today I want to talk a little bit about AI and cybersecurity and whether or not it's going to, lose us jobs or things like that. One thing that I wanted to talk about and touch on is the unsophisticated or unskilled attacker. There seemed to be a idea or a worry that a script kiddie now could develop sophisticated attacks with the use of like ChatGPT or other AI LLM models that would then let them write code that they wouldn't otherwise be able to write. And while that is true, I don't think it's going to change the threat landscape really in that regard. For the simple reason that they don't have actions on objectives. Okay, and what I mean by that is, yes, they can get the malware to write sorry, they can get the AI to write malware for them or tools for them, but they still need to know what they need to accomplish. Okay, so if we the video that I did um about a month back on showing the Redline Stealer malware, one of the comments that I got and one of the things that kept coming up was that this code isn't doing much, and they're right, it isn't. But that's the point. I think the misunderstanding there was what malware actually is. Some people think of it as this like black box voodoo that does lots of weird and weird things, but it's not. It's doing like some very common functionality. Now, defense evasion can get quite weird and funky, but in this case, there wasn't really any defense evasion, and as we've seen in that video, that was actually enough to trick or get around Microsoft Defender. But there's no secret sauce. Okay, it's not doing anything too funky. But the fact that people were like, well, but this isn't doing anything malicious. Well, it is, because it's software that's been installed on the system, gathering information without the user's knowledge or awareness. That is malicious at its core. But those comments made me think, and made me look and ask the question out to communities and stuff to say, well, what do you think malware is? What do you think it does? And the question was all very similar. They thought it was this secret stuff that does some really advanced things, when in reality, it's not. And I think that's where untechnical threat actors or potential threat actors, so like script kiddies who aren't that technical, or even just someone who's not even a script kiddie, just someone who works in the industry who's maybe not that technical, who wants to try and do something malicious. That's where they're going to fall down, because they might be able to get it to write something, but they need to know what they need to accomplish, and they need to be able to do something with it. So like the Redline Stealer steals crypto keys, it steals session cookies in particular. Does a script kiddie know how to use those to actually get access? Not necessarily. They could ask, and they could potentially use like a ChatGPT to get that information, but it's not readily available and it's not easy, and that's where they then start losing interest and move on. There's been a lot of studies done and honeypots showing what happens when someone who's not skilled gets in. Whenever Log4j happened, there was an abundance of this, where they have people getting initial access, which is typically the hardest thing to do, onto a server. They got onto the server, they logged in, but they didn't know what to do then. It reminds me of the Dark Knight. If you remember that, the Batman movie, the Joker, where he says, "I'm like a dog chasing a car. Wouldn't know what to do with it if I caught it." Same idea. They caught it. They go in. They go, "Shit, what do I do now?" And then they logged out again. Okay, that was what they seen commonly, because Log4j or Log4Shell was a very easy vulnerability to do. It was anyone could do it. It was, in my mind, a good um, parody to the world of now with ChatGPT and other AI models like that. They're enabling people to do things that their skill level wouldn't let them do otherwise. That okay, they've maybe now got the tools to do something, but they don't know what to do after that. Like, what's the next step? What's the next thing they want to accomplish? They don't have that. Now, it does lead into, well, what about sort of slightly more technical threat actors? So there are a lot of hacking groups that um, buy their payloads, buy their malware, buy initial access even, and there's a whole you know subgenre or area where attackers are selling their services to do these things, or to do them for an attacker and then selling them on. And for those actors, potentially these ChatGPT, or there are ones on the dark web which they would be able to have access to. Again, that's something that a really untechnical malicious person or potentially malicious person wouldn't necessarily have access to, is that the unrestricted language models that are floating around on the dark net. Now, it's not that difficult to get ChatGPT or Copilot to give you malicious stuff, but just they don't have access to those completely no guardrails ones. The no guardrails ones that these actors then have access to, they could use to generate their own malware, and that's then started another service where there are attackers who have made these LLMs specifically for malicious purposes, and they're then selling access to that. So there's just been a bit of a shift, I think, in the underground community of what's being sold, and in this case it's okay, you want to make your own payloads, which is something that is very appealing to a lot of attackers, because common payloads, as they're being used, they get fingerprinted, they get caught, and then they're not that useful anymore, because any semi-good infrastructure with EDR solutions and all that stuff will then pick those up. So they want to have new stuff. They want to, be able to have that OPSEC to say, well, if I run this, it's never been seen before, so it's difficult to pick up. So that's very appealing to them, even to the more technical ones, to be able to do these kinds of things themselves. So for them, certainly it does enable them to do more advanced things. But does that change the threat landscape for us as defenders? Not really. That before they were buying it off other people, now they're writing it themselves by buying the LLM services off other people. So, our detection processes and things like that are probably still going to be very, very similar. There is AI now being integrated into detection processes, and a lot of SIM tools now have AI to do plain language threat hunts, which is, I think, very beneficial from like an early analyst, someone who's not quite familiar with the syntax of the likes of Splunk or anything like that, where they're then able to just type in, this is what I want to see, so give me the proxy logs of this machine. Like being able to say it in plain text, and it's able then to convert that into an actual query that Splunk understands, or whatever other SIM tool you're using, and then spit that back. I think really helpful for that also. And again, for the more technical, where they're like, do you know what, I'm really not sure what I need to look for here, I'm just going to do it in plain text. It's not going to replace the actual query languages, because again, it's not going to give you everything. I think it's the way it was sold to me by a vendor is that it's going to be more of a shotgun effect of you throw out these this LLM query into Splunk, it's going to bring back a lot of stuff, and then you can use that to sort of pivot and drill down into what you need. So AI is definitely going to be used on both sides. I had a conversation with a colleague who said that an analyst is going to need AI knowledge in the future. We disagreed on it, because my thinking is you don't need to know how AI works to be able to use it. Okay, there's plenty of ChatGPT is a great example of this. Lots of people do not know how ChatGPT functions, but they use it. And I think it's going to be the same for any security tools that have AI baked in. You're just going to need to learn how it uses it, and then it'll then be able to go through and help you find whatever you need. I don't think it's ever going to replace analysts, because there is a lot, particularly for response detection, it might mean that you don't need quite as large of a SOC, because AI is able to eliminate false positives and false negatives. Potentially, there's a lot of hesitancy I've seen at the minute of doing that, because AI makes mistakes. Of course, it does mean humans make mistakes as well, but the mentality is that if the AI messes up and gets rid of loads of stuff, how would we know? Unless there's a log file of here's all of the stuff that it's said is non-malicious. So I think there are a couple of vendors that I've seen that are sort of doing more of the opposite, in that they're not using AI to rule anything out, but they're using AI to enrich other things, which I think is a better way of doing it, or a nicer way of doing it, because then you don't risk missing something. Could lead to more false positives potentially, but it is nice that then there's something that happens. Maybe it's not picked up by an alert or by an analyst, but the AIs went through and looked at it and went, you know what, this combined with all this other things, and been able to do that data aggregation very, very quickly, and go, well, all these things combined make this look more suspicious than what it is, and it escalates it again to get it in front of an analyst. Very, very useful. I've seen it being done, so I believe Elastic Stack have a similar solution in theirs. It's a really, really cool thing to be able to do. And it also sort of leads me on to, is it going to replace developers? Now, I'm not a dev, but I do use Python quite heavily. You've seen me write code on this before. I used to build security tools. I still do, although slightly on the more offensive side now. But I'm not a dev by trade. But I don't think it's going to remove devs. It's just going to be another tool that we can use to do things better or do things quicker, because it became quite apparent to me that I don't think it's going to replace devs whenever I was writing in Rust. So Rust is still a fairly new language to me. I've been learning it, I'm getting better. And AI is amazing for learning because I'm able to do things in Rust that I would never be able to do without AI assisting. But it's clear where the gaps in knowledge are. I can see I have no idea what this function is doing, and been able to use AI to be like, right, can you explain this to me in different ways as to what this is actually doing? As a learning tool, absolutely fantastic, and it's allowing me to build things in Rust again that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise, and it's helping me learn the syntax and the little foibles and all the weird things that are in there. But when I then take the AI and apply it to a language that I know, like Python or C, we'll stick with Python for now because that is my bread and butter language. The stuff I can do is ridiculous. It is amazing. I was blown away by just how much quicker I could do things in Python because I understand the language. When the AI fucks up and makes a mistake, I can fix it easily. But it's able to complement areas where I'm not so good. So I'm really crap as a front end developer and doing that tie in between back end and front end. I prefer doing the functionality over form. And I was writing a tool that was sort of like an automation platform thing. The front end has delayed for ages because I didn't want to do it, couldn't be asked. Using Copilot, I was able to get that front end working so quickly. And all the bits where I would hit a hurdle and go, oh, how do I do this? I'm going to need to Google, go to Stack Overflow, read through some really passive aggressive comments on people's questions. But no, didn't need to do any of that. Just using ChatGPT or it was actually Copilot, GitHub Copilot. It was able to do those bits for me or help whenever I made a mistake or was starting to mess up on things. And again, because I understood the language, it just made things so much easier because I was able to tie things in. I was able to structure things correctly, which is something that Copilot isn't necessarily good at. In Rust, my Rust code is really messy because I don't understand how it should be formatted. I don't know what makes sense as a structure for, when should I split this out into another file? How should the file structure be formatted? What's best practices in Rust? And I ask it the questions and it does give me answers of, well, this is roughly how, but putting that into practice is difficult. And again, AI can't do that for you. But Python, again, I know how it works. I know how to structure like Django projects, Flash projects, anything like that. I know how those structures work. And so taking that and being able to make not just, code that works, but it's also neat and clear. And then using AI to also help with comments as well, being like, oh, I forgot to put a comment in here. AI, just do a doc for me. Works. And again, I'm able to read through it because I understand the language. I know what it's doing. I'm able to correct any mistakes that it's having. So I think those kinds of AI tools are incredibly useful for someone who knows how to code and great for someone learning. I don't think it's going to replace devs because, again, knowing my own experience with trying to build things in Rust, that I don't understand that well, and seeing something that works and then reading through it going, this code is messy as hell. It's probably filled with like lots of little bugs and I won't be able to debug them well because I don't really understand what's going on in this code. It was AI that wrote X block, X function. I don't know what that's doing. Yes, I can get it to explain, I can try, but I don't understand the syntax and the little quirks of the language as well as one that I do. And not knowing that means that the code's unmaintainable, really. That's what it boils down to. So you might be able to build something, but whenever it comes to maintaining it, it's going to be very, very difficult because try to explain to AI a very weird bug where, sometimes this tool returns a null value when it's not meant to. AI is going to have a very hard time debugging that, but someone with experience in the tool might be able to, or sorry, someone with experience in the language would be able to actually debug that and triage and identify where the issue is. I don't think it's going to remove AI, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. Do you use AI at all at the minute in your jobs, in your spare time? As I said, I've been using Copilot now for a bit. I absolutely love it as a tool. It's really improved how quickly I can develop tools and also make my code a little bit more concise, as well as making sure I do comments. And I've also used it a bit in some security tools. So the Elastic Cloud Security is the one that I've been fiddling about with on the channel. My trial has expired, so I'm begging them if they'll give me a longer extension on it. But we'll see. Feeling that I can spin up a new free trial, and you just need an email address, so I can keep doing that. It's just a bit of a pain to set up each time. But yeah, if you're using any AI, what do you think? What do you think you are? Are you a dev? Have you ran into any problems? Have you? I can imagine some people maybe coming into interviews now for dev positions where they're like, oh yes, I've made all of these amazing tools, but in reality, AI's made them, not them. So yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious anyone's thoughts or feelings on that. So let me know. Yeah, what your experiences with AI have been, and if you've seen anything cool out there or weird. So I'll see you later.